Now we are going to discuss about the chapter 14 about extracting the data from STG transaction underscore AGG table and load the data into fact product AGG table. The concept introduced in this mapping is incremental aggregation. In the previous chapter, we have discussed about incremental loading using the mapping variable. Now we are going to discuss about incremental aggregation loading into fact product AGG daily table. Now this is the business requirement on stage transaction AGG. Load the data into your fact product AGG daily. In the product key, dealership key, date key, you need to get the lookup, corresponding date keys, and you need to do aggregation and load it into the fact product AGG daily. Now, what is aggregation of data? Based on the group by approach, you aggregate the data to find sum of quantity to price or cost or discounted amount. Let us take an example. Extracted data and loaded into staging of the transactions in the world system. The transactions happen in the world system which are created or modified on January 10th. This is the transactions which are loaded into stage transaction AGG of 10th January 2005 by using previous mapping, that is the mapping variable which we have used incremental loading, that is 10th January loaded into the stage transaction AGG. Now you are going to extract the data from stage transaction AGG and you will aggregate the data based on product ID, dealership ID and the transaction date to calculate sum of quantity. To get the total quantity into your target table. So what you do? The formula is sum of quantity. So to calculate the total quantity, the formula is sum of quantity based on product ID, dealership ID, transaction date, simple aggregation. That is group by on product ID, dealership ID, transaction date, product ID, dealership ID, transaction date. We'll aggregate the data to calculate sum of 0, 1, 10, 0, 1, 10, 10, 100 plus 10. That is aggregated data. On the date, 10th January, then 10220, 10th January 2005, 10th January 2005, 100 plus 300, then 1010, for aggregation, aggregation. Now let us assume the data has come into staging, previous mapping. Already this data existing in your target data, which is full aggregation for 110 based on transaction 10, 300. That particular ID, that is transaction 103, 100, date 11th January 5, by on product ID transaction 300, 0120, 10120, the one combination of 120, 100, then 02, 20, 11th January, 300, then 10310, 11th January. So this is normal aggregation of data we have done when we are loading back. Now, what is incremental aggregation? Yes, incremental aggregation. Now, what is incremental aggregation? Let us understand this very clearly. How to do it in informatica? Simple. But understanding the incremental aggregation. Let's say you have a bank account. Now you are in the month of January. You want daily balance at the end of the day, that month. Let's say on 1st Jan 2008, have deposited 10,000 the month of January. So when you look at that balance on after you deposited on 1/1/2008 for that month of January, your balance is 1,000. Now you haven't made any transactions in the bank, and on 5th Jan also when you see January monthly balance, that date 10,000. Now on 6th January again you have deposited 1,000. Now after you have deposited 6th January, and you see January monthly balance is 25,000. So in that month, what is your balance? At any given point of time, on that day when you look into that table, it should give me total balance amount in that month till that date. In that date for that month. Till that date for that month. This is called month to date balance. Till that date, what is my balance? Let us assume on 15th January, you have again deposited, or let's say removed money from your bank for some personal use, let's say 10,000. Then when I see the data on 16th January, what is my balance? Balance to date in that month January will be 15,000. This is called cumulative balance. So at the end of the month, on 31st January also when I see it, what is my monthly balance for January? It will be 15,000. Now, on 1st February, what is your balance? Month to date, that is in February month, what is my balance? No balance amount. For you have amount in the bank, 15,000 for January month, but you are seeing for the month of February any transactions have happened, and what is my balance that month? Let's assume on 2nd February you have deposited 10,000 rupees. Now When you see balance for February month, balance to date in that month is 10,000. Balance to date in that month, it's called daily aggregation for that month, is 10,000. Overall balance in my account is 25,000. This is called till date balance. That's what we all see in our accounts, till date balance amount when you open it and see. What is month, in that month what is the balance, you have to calculate separately. So, in projects also or in any lifestyle or any transactional businesses, like your car representative. His target is monthly he has to sell 10 cars. So on 1st January 2008, he was able to sell 2 cars. So what is the total cars he sold till date? Let's say the date is on 6th January 2008. I am seeing the report for that sales representative. What is the total cars he sold till date? Till date in that month is 2. Again, on 10th January, he was able to sell, let's say, on one particular day, or on 10th January, he was able to sell 1 car. Then what is the total till 10th January? That is, on 10th, after I sold it, or on 11th January, I am generating a report for that representative. Till date, in that month, how much he has sold? 3 cars. Then on 12th January, let's assume he was able to sell 3 cars. Then on 14th January, for example, total till date, let's say on 14th January, I was generating a report 2008, or seeing the data in that database till date. In that month, what is the month? That is January. How much he has sold? 8 cars. Cumulative. This is happening in the source system, in the transactional system. This is happening in the transactional system. Every day he is trying to sell the cars, but you are going to load, aggregate it based on the representative name to load the data into. Every day you load the data into your transactional system. But whenever I see the data for that month, I should get the cumulative data based on that representative. Now let us assume on 25th January 2008, he was able to sell 2 cars. So what we do? Let's say on 31st January, I want to see the data. Or 25th data I loaded into my fact table. In my data warehouse, how it will be? Cumulative for that representative in that month. Total aggregated value, sum of the cars he has sold will be 10 cars on 26. At any given point of time, from 26 till the month end, that is 31st. Whenever I want to see the data, I will get 10 cars for that month January for that representative. Now let us assume month changed. On 1st February, he sold the 2 cars. Now how will we load into the fact table of us cumulative? How will we load data? We will not add 10 plus 2. Fact table loading, in what we do for that representative, In that month February, when I load on 2nd January to my target table, I load in 2 cars. Then on 2nd February, he sold 4 cars. What will be the data in my table? For the fact table for that representative, sales sold in February month, it will be 6 cars. 2 plus 4, I load it into my fact table. So when I see the report, I can say, when I query the database, I can say that in February till date, if he hasn't sold anything from 2nd February to no sale, by that representative from 2nd February to, let's say, 18th February, at any given point of time, if I want to see what is the total sale made by the representative in the month of February, it will give me 6 cars. If I was on 2nd January, if I see it, I'll get 2 cars. Afterwards, I'll get only complete 6 cars. This type of cumulative loading into the data warehouse tables, a table is called incremental aggregation. Let me go by an example. Now, STG transaction AGG. This is the data loaded into my staging table. Now let us assume you have data in the stage transaction AGG. You extract the data from stage transaction AGG. Then you aggregate based on product ID, dealership ID, month and date of the transaction date. Because we are calculating from that month, we are trying to do that for that month. So same quantity, so how it works. When you are first loading the data into it, 10th January in that month, we will do it for the whole month, every day loading it. If I put 10th January, 11th January, then it will not cumulative. So 10th January, I call it as month end date for that month, 31st January. I change it, transaction date to 31st month end. How to do it in Informatica we will discuss later. So 31st January, I aggregate 10110. 10th January, I aggregate, I say this as 31 January 2005. 10110, 100, 10th 2, I convert to 31st January, 110, 200, so 400. Then next record 102, 20, 200, 102, 20, 100, 300. Cumulative for 31st January 2005. Let us assume on 11th January, this is the transaction date which you are loading from source to staging. Next day, you are going to load data into your aggregate table. Now look at it. You extract the data from the staging, the data. Now look at the logic. 11th January, cumulative, you have to load the data into fact table. 1st January, you loaded for that particular representative, month and date for January 2. Next day or 10th January, you have 1 car he sold. So when you load it, to load into that for that representative for that month end, 2 plus 1, 3. 3 plus 3, 6. So how you do it? 101, 10, 400, 31st January. We will convert this date into 31st January end date, month end date for 31st January 2005. So 101, 10. 11th January we convert it into 31st January. 101, 10, 200, 100 plus 200, 300 plus 101, 10 cumulative for the same month and date. So you will go ahead and update the data in your fact table for that combination of product ID, dealership ID and month date. Go and update it. So after this, when I see the data from this table for that particular product ID, for that particular dealership, for that month January 2005, in that total sale is 700. This is what we were doing it. 2 plus 2 cards, then 2 plus 1, 3 cards. Then 3 plus 3, 6, and 6 plus 2, 8. Like this you will load it. Or 2 sold on 1st January, next 4 cars sold on 2nd February, 2 plus 4, 6 in the table. Like this you do it. Same way here I am doing the same thing. Updating it. Next 102, 20, 200, 102, 20, 100, 300, 102, 20, 300. Accumulate it. Take it for that month. You update the transaction daily AGG table. Then 103, 10, 200, 103, 10, 200 plus 200 plus 200, 400. It will go and update it for that month. So next February, next date, 12th January data comes in. You convert it into month end. That month at any point means on next time when I see the report in the month of January, this is the data. So daily in the month you are going to accumulate and load it into your, if it exists you are going to update it basically. Fact table you exist for the product ID, for the dealership ID, for that month end date. Go and update it, cumulative. Let's say then you have 101, 20, 200. There is no record for it. So you go and see the data. There is no record for that combination of 1020. So you go and set it, aggregate it, set it, there are multiple processes. Now let us assume this is the data in your fact product aggregate daily. In the staging table, 1st February 2005 data has come. Now what we do? Month end date for 1st February 2005, it is 10110 1st February, 10110 1st February. We'll convert this into end date of that month, 28th or 29th, 28th. So 200 plus 100, 150. For that end date, there is no record in this. So if this record will go and insert into the fact table. Then from the stage 10220, you sum of quantity 300, 28th February 2005, end date, to go and insert it. So on 2nd February, when I see the data, or on 4th February, if there are no new transactions happened for the same combination, product ID, dealership ID in that month of February, I will see this data cumulative in my total quantity. This type of called incremental aggregation. How to do in informatica we'll discuss next. This is called incremental aggregation. Quarter to date, I want to see data. Month to date. That month till that date, what is my total sale? Year to date, the total year till date, how much? My target is, let's say, 1000 tons sell in a year, in iron ore or anywhere. Let us assume. Or let us say, in a year I have to sell 300 cars. Till date, how much I sold? Till today, in this year, how much I sold? That is year to date. In this quarter, how much I sold? Quarter to date. In this month, how much I sold? In that month, what are the transactions happen in the source system? Source system transactions will happen daily, but you have to cumulatively and load it. So for the same combination in that month, you find it, you go and first from the source you aggregate it, then you update this pre-aggregated data. Generally, this incremental aggregation works more in the reporting tools, but in informatica also provides this option of incremental aggregation. But generally, we as a ETL consultant ask the reporting people to do it, quarter to date, month to date. year to date. There are different reports. So if it is year to date, in February I am generating the report, what will be? Actually I have to aggregate 10110. This date will not be 28 February, it is year 2005 sales. So this 350 plus 700, it would have been 1050 here. And this will not be month to end date, it will be year end date. So February till 1st February when I loaded, it was 1050. So 1020 will be 300 plus 600, 900. Then other things will be same. These two records will not be there. All will be year to end date. Cumulative, you have to load it. Let's discuss this logic once again. Mental aggregation. Let's say you have data of 10th January loaded into staging transaction A. So you have to calculate sum of quantity, month to end date, 10110, 100, 100, and 200, 400. Then you aggregate it. That data is coming daily, but when you load it in month to end date, in that month I am aggregating and loading it. First time you are loading the 10th January, so you are aggregating and loading it to your fact table. Then next day, 7th January transactions are coming from your staging table. How will you load it? Month to end date. So while getting the data from STG transaction table, you aggregate it for 11th January 2005, but it is month in that month. So 10110, 100, 0110, 100, 200 plus 100, 300 plus already existing for the same combination of 31st January 10110, 400. This again, you aggregate this, put it here. Then from the fact table, what is the same combination, you take it. Then aggregate it, then update the target table for 700. Then 10220, 300, 10220, 300. Cumulative it is 600 for the same combination. You go and update this to 600. 10310, 200, 31st January, 10310, 400. You go and update this to 400. Then 10120, 31st January, no records. So you go and insert it. Then if the month February 1st data is coming in, then you will aggregate for that particular month end. So 10110, you aggregate it for that month end 28, and there is no record for that month end for the same product ID and dealership ID, so you insert it. This incremental aggregation. Now we are going to do how to implement this in Informatica. Mapping designer, source, import from database, this is STG, get STG underscore transaction AG, that is the table which we need. Target, import from database. Fact product AG. Nothing. 8 underscore 18. Fact product. For requirement. I drag my source. I drag my target. date expression. The transaction date. I need to get the end date. Month end date. How will I get it? The end date. For that date, I need to calculate it. So I use an expression transformation. This is a function. How to get the end date. Data is coming 10th January only. But I have to calculate the end date for that month. So please observe transaction date out, date time, make it as output port only. There is a function called last day. Please write it down. There is a function called last day. This function will give you for every last day of transaction date. When I put 10th January data, getting out, it will convert to last day of the month, 31st January 2005. So next day when I load the data of 11th January, data, then I have to calculate the last day of the month. So I'll use last day in my transaction date. Then I need a product key. Need a product key. Transformation. Create. Up. On dimension product. Import from relational table. Input product ID to this. Product ID to product ID input. There is no lookup, there is no need of dealership ID. So I take this dealership ID direct. But if you have dealership key, the target table, do a lookup on dealership dim dealership. Then look up on dim date. And take the transaction date out. I'll remove the columns which are not required. Condition. So transaction date out. If it is January, we will get 31st January 2008. For that, I'll get that particular date key. It is 31st January 2008 or date key, let's say 10. So for all, it will be 10 or 10. When the month changes, last day changes, then that last day of that February you will get a new. Now transformation, create aggregator, aggregation on for product, product, daily. What do you need? Product dealership ID. If it is dealership key in your target table, we look up on dealership. Hold back, rebate. Price unit cost. Now I will do the aggregation. So I will calculate per unit sold, create output port, sold, decimal amount sales, then revenue, formula for revenue is amount selling price then cost then discounted amount or discounted amount frame it as. The target table it is discount, but you have to write the formula here. It is discounted. That for that discount is represented by this discounted amount. So in the target table, be careful. You have to write the formula. Group by on, product key, dealership ID, date key. You have a lookup. You did a lookup on dealership. You did a lookup on dimension, then dealership by clause. Okay. Seven like that. So this is a simple aggregation. The difference is you have to find out the last day, that is transaction day, for that corresponding sub. Let this aggregate. Any other aggregation I have done. Is the new sheet 18 is a transaction that product is something product. So break it down. The paper write it down. Then we will discuss about how to aggregate, how we have created this. Now we'll create the session and the workflow. Further down. Now let me create a session for this. Task developer. Task create session s underscore m underscore 18 underscore fact underscore product underscore daily underscore ag. Mapping. What is my source? ag. Target. CP. Change bulk to normal. Lookup. Target. CP. Lookup. Target TGT. Create the workflow. Session 18 underscore m underscore 18 underscore fact underscore product underscore daily underscore. Now how to implement incremental aggregation. Every time it loads it, there is no combination of that record, it will insert it. If it comes with a new combination, then it has to update it, get it and update it. So what is the step? The task developer, what are the properties to enable this incremental aggregation? Yes. On this, what happens? How Informatica works? Observe. How Informatica works about mental aggregation internally. You have enabled that incremental aggregation in your session properties. What happens? When you run first time, the data goes to the, data goes to the aggregator cache to do the group by, based on the group by ports, aggregate the value and send it to the target table. Whatever you have aggregated, that cache, that data, that aggregated data will be stored in Informatica server. So let us assume first time the data has come for 10th Jan 2005. You have aggregated month end, you aggregated it, and you have that aggregated value. When the session is completed, that whole data will be stored in Informatica because you have enabled the incremental aggregation. That the data which is in the cache will be stored in the Informatica server. Now next time when you run it, that is that 11th January 2005 data, to extract from stage, what happens? When the session is executed, what does Informatica will do? In the aggregator cache, it will put that data which was stored in that server of the previous run. We will put it in the aggregator cache. The previous run data. The previous run data to the aggregator cache. That is data of 10th January 2005. End date will be the same. So what happens? This data which you are seeing in the aggregator daily data which you loaded into the target table, that data accumulated to aggregate data is in the, now this data is in the cache of aggregator transformation. Then what it will do? Row by row, data comes into the aggregator cache. Now the aggregator cache server, it will take the previous run of 10th January and put it into the aggregator cache. Now let us assume this. So 11th January data has come into the staging. We have the aggregator cache, previous run, the aggregator cache, record by record Informatica process, making qualifier goes to expression transformation, finds the last date transaction aggregator cache. Second record converts the last date aggregator cache. So this, like this, it will put the data into the aggregator cache. Now, based on the product ID, dealership ID, month and date, then we'll do the aggregate 110, 100, 10, 110, 100, 100, 110, 100, 700. It will the output as 110 January 5. So it will scan the cache based on the product ID, dealership ID, and month date. 10110 400, 0110 100 400 plus 100 500, 0110 500 plus 200 700. That will be the output. Then next combination 10220, 0220 300 plus 200, 500. Then 10220, 100 600 will be the output. Then 10310, month and date, 100, 10310, 100 plus 100 plus 200, 400 for the month and date. Then this will be the output, which will be updated. Your fact product daily aggregate, and this data, this cumulative data, will be stored in the informatica server. Next time when you run, this data will come into the aggregator cache. Then it's row by row from your source transaction table, whatever is the source, row by row comes into the aggregator cache, then aggregates it and loads it to the target table. Then whatever cumulative will be stored in the aggregator cache of data will be stored in the informatica server. How incremental aggregation works. Informatica. So when you go to the session properties, for example, if you have loaded data but by mistake the data is there, again you want to restart it from the start, then you have to enable this. Reinitialize aggregator cache. You enable this. Say okay, it will give you a message. Enabling the reinitialize aggregator cache property causes all previous aggregated data to be lost. Clean up that informatica server where it stores that data, and you, first time when you run it, you enable it, but ensure that next time when you run it, you have to disable this. If you don't disable it, then every time it will refresh the cache. So one time you want to reinitialize, first time you do it, then next time you disable this and use this aggregator cache for incremental aggregation. Then you execute the workflow. Then open your sheet and please write it down, this session name, source connection, target connection, and loop connection name, and the session properties to enable in aggregation. Then you execute the session. Now, for the practical purpose, this to work fine. What we should do, that is from source to staging, and from staging to your fact product daily. After you create this session and all that stuff, we are now discussing about complete flow from source to staging your target table. So how to do it, the complete flow. This is what is my explanation. The source, staging, source transaction EG, delete the data. Then first time you load it, so you insert this data of 10th January in your select distinct transaction date from source transaction AG. Now for practical purpose, we will do day-to-day loading. So 10th January 2005, you load this, and let's go back to our mapping variable of 17th mapping. If you have already loaded multiple times, then the value in your mapping variable changes. You cannot change that value because it is stored in the repository. I'm talking about previous mapping of source to staging data load. If you have mapping variable, you have loaded multiple times, so the value of the mapping variable changes. So it is stored in the repository. You cannot go and change that to 9th January 2005. Cannot be changed to 9th January 2005 in the repository. So practically what we do is we go and to the mapping variable. Please write it down somewhere. We will delete the mapping variable and recreate a new mapping variable. Date new, date time, initialize to 09/01/09/2005 MMDDYY format. Please, this is for practical purpose because if you have already run multiple times this mapping, so the value in the mapping variable will be changed, and which is stored in the repository. Now, if the data in your source is 10th January 2005, so if the date is changed, so it will not pick this data. So for the lab purpose, you go and delete that mapping variable, create a new one, initialize it, then go to the source qualifier, properties, the where clause, change this. This new mapping variable. So what are the steps I am trying to drive you? The point is, first you delete the data in the X underscore your ID, source underscore transaction underscore AGG, then insert with that statement which I have given for 10th January 2005 and say commit. Then come to the mapping of 17th mapping. Go to the mapping variable where you define it. Delete the previous mapping variable. Then create a new mapping variable and initialize to 01/09/2005. Then go to the source qualifier, remove the previous one and use the new mapping variable. Then go to the expression transformation, change in the set max variable for that new mapping variable. I am going to do now. Here you change it, variables, then you save this. Now in the source, we have loaded the data of 10th January 2005. Now I'll execute this after changing my mapping variable and all that stuff. Say refresh mapping. Then 17th session I will execute it. Running, succeeded. Let me go and check the data in my staging. Let's start from a transaction. The data in my now I'll execute my 18th. Before I execute, let me check. I hope there is no data in this. Date from fact, product, daily. AGG daily. There is no data. Start from product. While I execute this, start workflow. Let me go back. Data. So date key will be 24534. Then the date January. How it will be? Let's see. Let's start from dim date. Date. Date key 453. See, it has taken 31st January to 5. So it has calculated the revenue stuff data into the target. Next load, what should I do? Source, I'll make it as 11th January. Search it, check, don't forget to commit it. Now I am going to execute my 17th mapping. I click and say start workflow. So let us go and check in my stage. There's 11th January data. Then I load my input. So like this, I have to load the data, staging, into the fact product AGG daily. So let us see the date, string to date key. has loaded the data, but it will be of the same key. When it changes to February, you'll have two dates. So this is how you work on incremental aggregation. Go ahead and create this mapping and complete it. The concept of incremental aggregation.